Hello viewers, welcome back to Crazy Row Studio. Today we will be looking at the topic BMR or bare metal restore of a Windows machine. So you can call it bare metal restore or recovery, totally up to you. So let me start this video first with apologizing about the NetWorker commands app for iOS. I'm still having issues with my Apple developer account. The profile is not getting created on the app Xcode, and I'm having all sort of trouble. So please bear with me. I will get this sorted out, and I will have the app published on Apple Store. So you can follow me on Twitter to get the latest information regarding this. I might be breaking this video up into three parts, possibly one with the complete entire video wherein I talk about BMR, what the components of Windows are that are backed up, what are critical disks, and so on. Then I show you the actual BMR which is successful, and then also with one wherein the BMR fails, and I show you where to go to check the logs, which logs to check, and so on. I'll have one part wherein it just has the successful BMR, uh, no explanation of what BMR is and what the network components are. Then I might create another video wherein it has just the successful BMR and the troubleshooting part. So three videos. Go ahead and check any of them depending on your requirement. If in case you don't want to spend the entire time here looking at everything, then you can go ahead and select one of them. Alright, so let's get going with BMR. So what exactly is BMR or bare metal restore? So bare metal restore is the operation that restores the operating system and data on a host after a catastrophic failure. So it can be anything. It can be a server crash, a disk crash, a location, a disaster, or any of the reasons. So BMR is basically an automated process that does not require a manual installation of operating system. So this is the main component that makes BMR different from other um, full restore or full system restore, is that for a full system restore, the usual practice is that you first go and install the operating system, then you bring the operating system up to the correct code or patch level, then you apply the correct hostname, IP addresses, make the changes in the environment to make sure that the system is similar to what you had prior to the disaster, and then you go ahead and do the system restore and the data restore onto the said system. But in case of BMR, you just need a plain hardware in case if it is a physical machine. So the specs of the physical machine should be similar to what you had in the original machine. And for your VM, if it is a VM and you have not done a image level backup and you have done only an file system level backup, then you can also do a BMR on a VM with the VM specs being same or similar to what you had uh, on the original machine. So the size of the disks is very important, because if you have less amount of disk, then the recovery would definitely fail. So make sure that you have same or a little more than what you had for the original server. So the BMR in NetWorker is automated using the Windows ASR writer and the other Microsoft VSS writers, which identify your critical volumes that are to perform a full recovery of your system. So the main save set in NetWorker that supports BMR is disaster underscore recovery. So this is the save set that you might have seen whenever you run a file system level backup of your Windows machine with the save set as all. When the all breaks down, this is one of the component that is backed up as part of the all save set. Uh, the disaster underscore recovery itself is made up of multiple components. So in case you give disaster underscore recovery as the save set name, then it again breaks up or is resolved into multiple save sets, and those are the save sets that you see on your screen right now. So the first we have the critical volumes. So critical volume are the volumes which contain files for an installed Windows service. So this could be anything from an application to mainly installed application. So if you have something like a SQL which is installed, then you have usually you do not install SQL on your main partition or the operating system partition. You have different partitions for database, logs, and the binaries and so on. So when this happens, Windows is going to go mainly the ASR or the Windows VSS writers. They are going to go and check which of those volumes have these Windows services and dependent files, and it is going to add it as a critical disk. So again, you do not have control on what Windows will select as a critical disk, and what it excludes as a critical disk. But there are a few non-critical disks that can be considered as critical disks. So this is basically if in case you have mounted a non-critical disks within a critical disk. For example, if you have created a shortcut and mounted it on one of your files or folders within the critical disk, then again your non-critical disks will be added as a critical disk and backed up, because it is referring to a file on the critical disk. Any volume which are part of a dynamic disk. So if you have a disk and you have formatted it as a dynamic disk and you have multiple partition in that created on that disk, and one of those partition is a critical disk, then when a disaster underscore recovery is resolved, it is going to select all the partitions or all the volumes that belong to that dynamic disk. So these are few of the cases wherein the non-critical disks get added to the list of critical disks. So in case you have anything of this sort going on and you are not able to figure out what might be the reason, so this might be one of the reasons that uh, are constituting to what you're seeing, the behavior that you're seeing in your environment. Also, starting with Windows 2012, the system writer does not report the Windows 32 service file as part of the system component. So as a result, the volumes that contain these Windows Win32 service files are not considered critical, and the disaster underscore recovery save set will not include these volumes as critical disks. So again, keep that in mind. But there is a way to disable this feature or to override this feature. There is a registry key that you can edit, and more details about this is in the description. So these details are also available on the NetWorker administrator. So make sure that you go through the NetWorker administrator to get more details about this. Other than this, there is also a factor during BMR backup or disaster underscore recovery backup that influences what files are not backed up. So this includes the files that are listed under the files not to backup registry key, the files that are excluded by the system writer, and also this is going to exclude files that are backed up by your application system writer, application VSS writer. So keep that in mind. So if you have like a SQL module or an Exchange module, so basically the NMM installed, and that is actively taking backups of your application, then the backups that are taken or picked up by this module is not again backed up by the system writer or the VSS writer as part of BMR. To get a good detailed understanding of what is included, what is not included, I again strongly suggest you to go ahead and check the Windows Administrator's Guide. It has a very detailed and vivid explanation of the BMR process and what files are selected, how they are selected, and all this information. So please go ahead and refer to your Windows Networker Administrator Guide for more details. So other than the critical volumes, we also have the Windows roles and features save set that is added. So this save set is relatively new. So if you are on versions prior to NetWorker 8, then you might not see this. So I highly doubt anybody has a version which is lower than 8, but yeah, it is a possibility. This is the new save set that replaces the VSS save sets that we saw on 7.x and earlier. It also includes the system reserved partition and the UEFI partition if that is available. So what are the main requirements for doing a BMR? Basically, you just need a full backup of your entire Windows system. This includes all the components within the disaster underscore recovery, that is all the system components, as well as the critical disks. You also need the non-critical disks because if you just have the critical disk data, then you might be missing on some data that are required for your application to run successfully. So make sure that everything on your system is backed up, and make sure that all the partitions on the Windows machine that you have, which is critical, are being backed up every day. So you need a full backup. So if in case you're looking at an incremental backup that was done, then obviously a full backup is definitely required, and then it will do a point in time backup. You will see through in the demo that you have the option of selecting the backup date and time during the restore process. And next you need a Windows BMR image. A NetWorker Windows BMR image is basically an ISO that you can download from the support site. This is a bootable disk image, so if in case you're using doing a BMR on a physical machine, then make sure that you burn this into a bootable disk and boot your physical machine using this NetWorker Windows BMR. This is an image which is Windows based. It has a Windows kernel and a NetWorker layer about it, which is just enough to boot up your Windows machine, get the network connectivity in place, and also have the networker component to do the actual restore of the data, pulling data from the respective data source, data domain tape, whichever that is. Now that we have gone through all the requirements and what exactly BMR is, let's go ahead and do a quick demo on this. So before I do a demo, so in case you're interested to find out which volumes on your machine are part of the critical disk, then you have an option in NetWorker to do this. So you can use a save command with the -o switch, and with the VSS writer LCV is equal to yes. So if you see here, let's just wait. It might take a few seconds to get you the output. And you can see that right now I just have one disk on this system, so it is marking that disk as obviously critical because it has the operating system on this. So in a similar manner, you will have all the critical disks listed here. Again, these critical disks are selected by the Windows VSS writer. NetWorker does not have any part in selecting the critical disks. So before you do go ahead with the BMR recovery, first check if you have all the appropriate save sets that you require. Alright, so let's go ahead and run the mminfo command for SQL1, which is our client. I just have one backup, so I'm just running this as is. So this is the backup that we are trying to restore. It is a full backup, and if you remember the save set list that are part of BMR or disaster underscore recovery, it was a critical disk. In our case, the critical disk is just C. If you remember from the command that we ran earlier, it is the Windows roles and features, which is system state itself, the system state partition, and the disaster underscore recovery itself. So this is what we need for restore, and this is what we have, and everything is in a browsable state. This needs to be in a browsable state. If in case your disaster underscore recovery is not in a browsable state, then it will not show up in our available list of backups when we are doing the BMR. Get a new VM. Let's say create and register a new VM. So new, I'll call it my original server is SQL1, so let's call it restored. This is all optional. You can do this if you want. You can skip it otherwise. So data store is this. So I have just 37 gigs. Let me see if I'm able to complete the config. This is going to be thin provisioned. Okay, it's giving me that error, but let's see how that behaves. Then I have network. It's not a public one. I need it in VM network, so the type is again E1000E. So the disk image here, I have to change this to. So I have the NetWorker bootable disk on my data store, which is this one. So this is the bootable disk that I have. I'm going to select that and then say next. Summary here. 1 CPU, 4 GB memory, 1 Ethernet, hard disk 40 GB, and I have the ISO connected to it. Click on finish. Okay, now that we have the ISO mounted and everything is in place, let's go ahead and boot this VM. So we are in that SQL 1 restored. Quick note here. There is a link on your screen right now which is for a support article on the Dell support site. So according to the article, the current BMR has a bug in it which I struggled a lot during this demo. I tried to fix it, so I came across this article and I was able to fix it. So the fix is very simple. You'll have to change the date on your system BIOS to any date prior to January 1, 2021. So this is some kind of bug related to the date itself. So I did that, and now let's go ahead and boot the system up again. I hope it does not reset back to the original date. So this is the NetWorker Windows image. Okay, it's initiating. First it will set up the DNS and stuff, because it is going to try and pick up the. Okay, so let's go ahead and change the date now. So the current date of recording 27/20/21. So I'll change this to my time zone in India. So it's 5:30 Chennai. Let's click on next. So the next is for your NIC selection, the network interface selection. So as you can see, we had selected E1KE, which is E1000E. So try and select this particular NIC card no matter what your original NIC was in production, because the ISO that we have, it has only limited drivers in it. So if in case you want this to be very smooth, it is best to use a driver which is already it is best to use a hardware which already has a driver in the image itself. Otherwise you have to go through the process of adding that driver to the image and then using this image for your production restore. So I have just one NIC and that is detected, so that's good. Let's go ahead and give next. The name of our system is SQL1. Domain is crazyrove.com. IP address is going to be 192.168.31.21. This is 255. Oops, 20, and my gateway is 168.31 and 1. I have a DNS with the IP 20. So that should be good enough. Let's go ahead and click next. So this is going to configure the hostname and the network. It might take a few seconds, so let's just wait for it to complete. So whenever any process takes a bit longer, do not panic, wait for the process to complete. Alright, in the next screen we are going to select our NetWorker server. Our NetWorker server is NSR Linux. So let's put the complete FQDN as well, and then we say next. So here you'll see that I just have one backup. So depending on how many backups you have, you'll have that option of selecting any of the backup for a point in time restore. So you can click on the respective date and time to select that backup. For me it's just one, so I'm just selected that, and then let's click on next. Here it is giving me an information of the save sets that will be restored, and if you can see, the size is just 16 gigs and your disk is supposed to be a little more than 16 gig for this restore to complete. But as you saw during the configuration, we have 40 gigs assigned to this, so well and good. Always keep this perform a quick format, so if you uncheck this, it might take a longer time because I think it'll try to do a normal format of the disk. So let's go ahead and click next. So next it is going to give me a summary of what exactly it's trying to do. So here you can see that this is the summary. It is trying to format before the restore C and the system partition. Then it is also telling me what was the hardware, the source hardware type, the destination hardware type. Here you have an option to back up the BMR log file. So if a restore does fail and if you have this option checked, then what the networker does is that it just takes a backup of these BMR log files, which you can restore and check. You also have an option to check these files on your system before, if in case anything fails. So I'm going to show that, but first let's just concentrate on see how a successful BMR looks like. Then I'll show you how a botched or a failed BMR looks like. So let's go ahead and click on restore now. So it is telling me that I can go ahead and format the disks. I say okay. So first it is going to do the OSSR metadata. This is basically a file which is backed up as part of disaster risk recovery. This contains information regarding your partition. So it is going to restore this, read it, and then it is going to do the partition and formatting. So now you can see that it has created the created the partitions, and now it has started the critical disk restore. Let's just hop on to our NMC and see how that looks like. So it is still not initiated. Yeah, so if you see reading done, so this was for the initial read of the disaster underscore recovery save set. So if you can see here down in the logs, wait for a couple of minutes. So you can see that it has already started doing the restore. So you can see that it has started reading. So let me pause this video until the restore completes. It might take a few minutes. So let me pause this video here and come back when the restore is completed. So the restore is almost coming to an end. As you can see, it has completed 95%, 99%. Okay, so the system, the C drive is done. It is just restoring the system state. And as you can see, the summary status here, you can it says that it has recovered the C drive, the system partition, and now I can go ahead and reboot the system for it to boot into the Windows machine. So in certain situations, there might be issues with your system booting up, wherein your restore is completed, everything is done, dusted perfectly, no issues. But still, if your system does not come up, it's not actually an issue with the restore itself. It might be one of multiple reasons. One reason might be that the new hardware or the new system that you're restoring to, that does not have the same hardware that was on the original system, and thus it might be missing a few drivers on the system. The system administrator might have to go into recovery mode and fix these issues. So if in case the restore is completed successfully but the system is not booting up, please do not waste your time by doing multiple restores again and again on the same hardware, underlying hardware. Try and talk to your system administrator and have them go ahead and have them boot it into a recovery mode, and then try to fix the driver issue that is the main underlying cause for such issues. But yeah, so that is one of my suggestions to you on BMR specifically. So let's go ahead and log into the system. So as you can see, it's an administrator, same username, password. So as you can see, it also has all the other applications. So there are no many applications, it's just a Chrome that I had installed. So that is already present. So let me go ahead and bring up the command prompt so that we can check the host name. So it's SQL and IP configuration, as you can see, is the 192.168.31.21, and you can also see that it is already configured and connected to the DNS and domain. So this was simple and easy. So if you are happy with this, you can go ahead and stop watching the video here, but I'm going to continue and show you a scenario wherein a restore fails and how and where to you can find the logs pertaining to that failure. So let's go ahead and shut this down. So I'm going to make a few changes here to this. What I am going to do is, let me go ahead and delete the hardware that I have here. Okay, delete this from the data store as well, and then save so that storage is gone. Let's now add another disk. So this time what I'm going to do is I'm going to add a disk which is not able to cope with the data that we have. So as you have seen, the data that we have is around 17 GB. So I'm going to give it only 10 GB, and then we will try to boot from that disk. So I have, let me go ahead and see if I have, yeah, the BMR there. So let's go ahead and say yes. Let's now boot this disk or boot this particular VM. I want to quickly check if my BIOS date is still prior to. So this I have to make it 12, maybe 01 2020, and then save this, say yes. I'm doing this because of the bug that I had mentioned earlier. So if in case it is set to the current date, the Java applet crashes and it does not come up. So just to have our the NetWorker wizard that helps us with the restore to work, we need to do this step. So let's wait for it to come up. So there we have it. Let's go ahead and change the date now. We are in 2021 and we are in plus 5:30 Calcutta time. So let's search for that. Yeah, Chennai, Kolkata, Mumbai, New Delhi. I click on next. Next, it's going to detect the NIC card. So this is what we want. Let's go ahead and select next. Give it the correct host name, which is SQL1, domain, and then give it the appropriate IP or the correct IP address, 192, and my DNS IP is 20. Let's say next. So it is going to show you the available disks. So I have added just a 10 GB disk, so that is what it will show you now. Alright, so in the next screen you will see the disk. So if, as I told you, the disk is just 10 gigs. So let's go ahead and click on next. Available server. So my server name is NSR Linux. And click next. So it's going to pick up the backups that it can read from the media database. Okay, I just have one backup, so that's selected. All the things that we had done earlier. All said and done, look at the summary and let's say restore. So this, as I told you, is going to fail, and we are going to troubleshoot and see how to check the logs to figure out what might be the reason for the failure of the restore. So okay, as you can see, the restore has failed, and it is asking us to go and check the OSSR director.raw. I click on OK, and it's going to back up. As I told you earlier, as I had checked the option to back up the logs to NetWorker in case of failure, that is what it just did. And we can click on this view logs. Okay, and the problem with this by default is that it is only showing you the .log. So some of you might confuse with this, so just make sure that you are selecting all files. Okay, so the one it wanted us to check was the OSSR director.raw. So let's go ahead and see what that log tells us. So it by default opens with a notepad, which should be good enough for us. And let's go ahead and see what caused the failure. So it says successful set, successfully enabled all the creation. So it recovered the OSSR metadata, and when it did restore the OSSR metadata and it was creating the OSSR partitions, it saw that the disk that is set to active on the BIOS is too small to recover the original system. So we have to replace the disk with a larger one and retry the restore again. So as I mentioned, this was one of the issues wherein we had trouble with the restore. So checking this log is going to help you to precisely understand what the issue might be. So issue again might be that the alias is taken something else, and that is what might be causing the issue. There might be a wrong or duplicate IP address. So whatever the issue is, that particular error will be logged in this file, and whenever the restore fails, please come and check that particular log file. So again, come here, switch this to all files and check the OSSR director.raw. So sometimes this might not tell you the entire story, so you might have to check the recover.log and recover_metadata.log as well. So these 3 or 4 log files are the ones that you need to check whenever you have issues here. So this is all I had for this video. I hope you will be able to do or make and understand a better BMR restore going forward. Thanks for sticking with me till the end of this video. I hope you found this useful. If you have any questions or comments, share it with our community in the comment section below, or you can drop me a message at my Twitter account. I will see you on another video. Goodbye.